I guess the two more things I'll just say about this quickly. One is, what's really interesting about PACE, in my mind, is a question of sovereignty of the jurisdiction, which is where the legal discussions are headed. So jurisdictions assess properties all the time for public good, for roads, for sewers. In some parts of the U.S., we assess to bury utility lines for aesthetic improvements. We'll assess properties to do seismic improvements. And so the question is this an impingement on the sovereignty of a jurisdiction to decide whether or not it can assess for this particular public good? And there's some nuances to all of that, but it's a fascinating structure, a really fascinating case, and we'll see what happens. I did throw utility on bill on the same page, in part because it's very similar. Is utility on bill a familiar concept? Is everybody aware of that, or most of you aware? Same idea, almost identical idea, except instead of paying back through your tax bill, you pay back on the utility bill. So the financing, be it public or whether it's coming through the utility, is channeled through your utility. You agree to, again, 100% upfront financing. You agree to pay it back through a charge on your utility bill. In some ways, it's actually nicer because your utility bill comes every month, and theoretically, you see line item for energy savings, line item for what you're paying to pay back for the efficiency retrofit or the distributed generation, and those should cancel themselves out. The question for utility on bill is whether or not the stick is as strong as the lien on the property. So is the utility really going to shut the power off and hold the property owner accountable if they're not making payments? And there's not the same degree of confidence in that regard. I'll just spend a second on this one. So this is a great derivative of PACE in Babylon, New York. What they did was they took so they sort of skipped PACE, or dodged it, given everything that was happening, and they said, we're going to use our existing authority to take away trash. We're going to classify carbon as trash, and we're just going to put another line item on the bill that we send to you for collecting rubbish. There's going to be another line item that says collecting trash. Same principle as PACE, but it's not a lien on the property, it's a services fee. If you don't pay the services fee, there could be implications for an assessment, and then we're sort of back into the PACE conversation, but that's just a clever little derivative. This, I'll spend a couple minutes on this one, and then I think I'll try to wrap up. We're most optimistic about what are called energy services agreements, managed energy services agreements. This is a particular structure by a company called Transcend Equity Development. And this answers a number of the barriers, not all of them. But just briefly, the model here, the idea is that the developer, the project company, has an agreement with the property owner where the property owner agrees to pay them their utility bill at a level of historical usage rates. So for a period of time, 7 to 10 years, you agree to pay your utility bill to them instead of to the utility. And the developer finances 100% of the retrofit, owns and operates the equipment, and does so on an off-balance sheet basis because it's an operating expense, because it's just like you're just paying your utility bill, but you're paying it to somebody else. And the developer takes the delta between the historical usage rate for that period of time and what they're able to extract through efficiency interventions. And then there are varying models in terms of how the payments flow in these things, but in this instance, they pay the utility bill first, they do debt service and equity payments second, and then lastly, they take their profit. This is also very clever in the sense that it answers the split incentive question, because it's just payment of the utility bill, which is what the occupants of leased space were doing anyway. I think we have questions around scale. We definitely have questions around recourse, to my point earlier about whether it has collateral or not. They claim that, I think the notion that these developers have in terms of recourse is that, yes, the equipment has perhaps no value outside of the property, but that the pain and suffering, the threat of pulling a boiler out of a building, which would essentially make a building useless, is strong and compelling enough to be effective in terms of ensuring payment flow. This is another one. I'll skip it. Metris. And then just one moment on some additional considerations. So data, obviously, to my earlier point about some future aspiration to underwrite based on streams of cost savings, capturing data is really important. We think it's really important for a number of reasons. From a bank's perspective, we're really interested in, there are a number of enterprise software companies that are getting into the space. We think it's really interesting what they're proposing to do in terms of helping large institutions with global portfolios to better assess and understand and bring to the fore the sort of the best efficiency opportunities. So we see that as a pipeline, potential pipeline generator for us. Standards are obviously really important, as are whether this activity is regulated, mandated, or voluntary. In the U.S., we're relying almost entirely, and we're inching towards mandates, but we're still in a universe where we're relying on the voluntary acts of property owners to understand a proposition and execute on it. When I say inching, there are cities, New York being one of them, where I think it's either 30,000 or 50,000 square feet. Owners of properties of that size are now required to do annual energy audits and to make that information a part of the public record. There was a bill that didn't pass in New York that would have required those property owners to, in any case where they found through that audit opportunities where there was a 20% 5-year ROI, that they would have to execute on it, that they would have to do that. That didn't pass, but we're getting there. So I'll stop there. There's a few other slides, but I'd rather open it up for some conversation and for Michael's comments. And thanks again for the opportunity. As I said when I started, we're keen to figure this out. I don't think we've figured it out yet, and I'm looking forward to Michael's remarks.